This moment finds you here for a reason beyond coincidence. What you're about to receive carries weight and significance, a message flowing from divine wisdom meant specifically for this season of your journey. The timing isn't arbitrary. You were guided to this place because spiritual forces recognized something forming in your path before your natural eyes could perceive it. In profound mercy, intervention arrives now, before consequences solidify and while course correction remains possible. Understanding this context matters. What follows isn't designed to produce shame or condemnation, but rather to provide protection and preservation. Consider this carefully and honestly. Not every person who enters your life arrives as a gift from heaven. Not every connection that stirs your emotions represents divine alignment. Not every woman who feels familiar or comfortable has been sent by God to walk alongside your purpose. Certain relationships don't announce their danger through immediate destruction or obvious harm. Instead, they operate more subtly, gradually diminishing your momentum, clouding the clarity you once possessed, creating interference with your obedience, and slowly turning down the volume on that still small voice within your spirit. What brings comfort to your physical senses and emotional needs can simultaneously create catastrophic damage in your spiritual dimension. God speaks this warning because the connection in question possesses the power to divert you from your intended path. Perhaps you haven't fully recognized this truth yet. Perhaps part of you continues constructing justifications, building cases for why this relationship makes sense or feels right. Yet heaven maintains a perspective you cannot currently access, a clear view of where this path ultimately leads. God perceives the version of yourself that emerges if you remain in this distracted, weakened, delayed, and spiritually compromised state. This isn't about divine control or arbitrary restriction. This represents protective love in action. When God instructs you to step back immediately, it signals that the danger hasn't fully manifested its consequences yet, but will inevitably do so if the warning goes unheeded. This functions as a red flag released from heaven itself, a divine interruption, a critical moment where choosing obedience will extract a cost from your comfort, while choosing disobedience will extract a far greater cost from your destiny. God's posture toward you in this moment isn't anger or disappointment. Rather, God fights actively on your behalf. The message resonates clearly. I didn't bring you this far in your journey to watch you become lost to something I never authorized or ordained for your life. Pay attention to the signs your own experience has been providing. That piece you've been missing lately, that's a signal worth acknowledging. That persistent unease you keep dismissing or rationalizing away, that represents a warning your spirit has been attempting to communicate. Your internal landscape has been trying to tell you something important. If you'll grant it your honest attention, every significant destiny throughout Scripture faced a defining relationship test. Adam encountered it. Samson faced it. Solomon experienced it. David walked through it. In each narrative, the relationship didn't initially present as dangerous or harmful. Yet each carried consequences that literally shaped the course of history. This pattern exists not because relationships themselves are evil or wrong, but because relationships are extraordinarily powerful. They function as gateways, shaping how we perceive reality, influencing the decisions we make, and quietly steering the direction our lives take. God designed relationships to serve as multipliers of grace and purpose, but the adversary consistently exploits them as dividers and disruptors. A relationship possesses the capacity to either accelerate your calling or silently abort it before it fully develops. Rarely does a connection announce which category it belongs to at the beginning. Acceleration and abortion often feel remarkably similar in their early stages. Both produce emotion, connection, excitement, and comfort. The critical difference only becomes visible with time and the application of spiritual discernment. The most dangerous relationships aren't the obviously abusive ones or the overtly sinful ones. Those situations are actually easier to recognize and simpler to flee. The most dangerous relationships are the ones that feel almost right while remaining spiritually misaligned. They're close enough to keep you attached, yet off enough to create a slow, steady pull away from your center. These are connections that don't appear wrong on the surface, but gradually weaken your spiritual conviction. They don't forbid prayer, but somehow make it less convenient or feel less urgent. They don't directly attack your faith, but successfully distract your focus. Over extended time, they lower your spiritual sensitivity degree by degree, all without triggering obvious alarms or raising clear red flags. This explains why this message likely feels intense or confrontational. It isn't random pressure or unnecessary urgency. This represents protective intervention. God isn't reacting late or scrambling to catch up with developments. He intervenes early, speaking while correction remains possible and before consequences become permanent. This accounts for that uneasiness your spirit has been carrying. Unease often represents discernment attempting to speak before your rational mind constructs elaborate justifications. Your spirit has been sensing misalignment even while your emotions worked overtime to justify continued attachment. God speaks now, before emotional attachment transforms into spiritual bondage, before feelings completely override obedience, before familiarity successfully replaces discernment. This urgency doesn't flow from fear but from mercy. God actively guards your destiny during this window when you still possess the power to choose alignment over attachment. Understand this truth clearly and deeply, because misunderstanding this moment could extract a price higher than you currently realize. God's warning doesn't aim to hurt you, it aims to save you. Warnings represent acts of love, not punishment. Silence indicates indifference. Warning demonstrates active involvement. God doesn't warn about things he doesn't care about. He doesn't intervene in situations where he's already disengaged or withdrawn his attention. If God speaks now, it confirms he remains invested, actively protective, and attentive to where your life trajectory is heading. If God warns you specifically about this woman, it isn't because he desires to deprive you of companionship or withhold good things. It's because he intends to preserve you and your purpose. Your purpose exists in a fragile state during this particular season, not weak, but forming. Fresh foundations crack easily when weight gets added too soon or applied improperly. Your calling carries tremendous sensitivity right now. Sensitivity doesn't indicate instability, it means precision is required. Certain seasons demand stricter boundaries, sharper discernment, and fewer decisions driven purely by emotion. What you choose to tolerate now directly shapes what you'll have capacity to carry later. Your next level requires discernment operating above emotion. Emotion reacts to how something feels in the present moment. Discernment perceives where something leads across time. God is training you to make choices based on destination rather than desire. Scripture teaches that God orders the steps of the righteous. However, steps can only receive divine ordering when the heart maintains willingness to listen. When listening stops, direction blurs and loses definition. When discernment grows dull, movement becomes dangerous rather than productive. You've been praying specifically for clarity. That clarity has now arrived. You've been asking God consistently for direction. That direction now stands before you. Yet clarity frequently arrives before comfort, and direction often demands obedience as its price. This warning doesn't signal the end of something good. It represents the protection of something far greater that remains ahead on your journey. What you're currently experiencing isn't random emotional turbulence or inexplicable inner chaos. This represents spiritual information attempting to break through into your conscious awareness. Confusion frequently serves as the first alarm system, indicating something has shifted out of proper alignment, particularly when romantic feelings and emotional attachment are involved. This relationship generates confusion because it nourishes your emotions while simultaneously starving your spirit. On the emotional level, you feel genuinely seen, desired, understood in ways that feel validating and affirming. On the spiritual level, however, you feel progressively drained, increasingly distracted, and noticeably less sensitive to divine promptings. When something feeds one dimension of your being while systematically weakening another dimension, that dynamic is never neutral or benign. It functions as a divisive force. The relationship provides companionship yet simultaneously drains your peace. You're not alone in the technical sense, yet you feel deeply unsettled. You're connected to another person, yet internally you experience persistent restlessness. Peace stands as one of God's primary indicators and measuring tools. When peace consistently erodes in someone's presence, that pattern isn't coincidental. That's discernment speaking a language you need to learn to interpret. This connection excites your flesh while dulling your hunger for God. Activities that once naturally stirred you toward prayer now feel optional or negotiable. Disciplines that once required your attention now seem less important or urgent. This describes precisely how spiritual misalignment operates in practice. It doesn't launch direct attacks against God or openly oppose faith. Instead, it slowly, gradually makes God less central to your daily experience. Scripture declares clearly that God is not the author of confusion. Confusion doesn't originate from clarity or truth. It emerges from competing influences pulling in opposite directions simultaneously. When confusion increases in intensity, alignment is proportionally decreasing. Something pulls in two conflicting directions, and your spirit registers that tension even when your mind cannot articulate it clearly. Chosen one, grasp this foundational truth: love that originates from God does not disconnect you from God. That principle matters immensely. God's love doesn't blur your vision. It sharpens and clarifies it. It doesn't weaken your discipline. It strengthens and reinforces it. It doesn't compete against your purpose. It supports and advances it. Love flowing from divine source grounds you, establishing stability rather than producing emotional highs and lows that leave you unbalanced. It strengthens your capacity to say no when necessary and yes when it truly matters. It draws you into closer proximity with God rather than creating distance from Him. If a relationship consistently pulls you away from prayer, from clarity, from discipline, from purpose, then it cannot be classified as a blessing regardless of how pleasant it feels in the moment. Feelings are real and valid, but they are not always right or reliable guides for decision-making. God isn't trying to confuse you through this process. He's trying to free you by speaking truth you need to hear. This represents the point where many believers stumble and fall, not because they lack genuine faith, but because they confuse emotion with divine instruction. Attraction feels spiritual when it reaches high intensity. However, intensity and direction are not synonymous concepts. Many people step completely off their assigned path, not through conscious rebellion, but through emotional momentum they never pause to examine critically. Attraction operates in the emotional realm. It responds to chemistry, comfort, attention, and familiarity. It asks primarily how something feels in the present moment and judges value based on immediate emotional satisfaction. Attraction can feel remarkably powerful, utterly convincing and desperately urgent, but it wasn't designed to function as leadership or guidance. Assignment operates in the spiritual realm. It's rooted firmly in purpose, obedience, and alignment with God's revealed will. Assignment doesn't rush forward impulsively. It discerns carefully. It asks fundamentally different questions. It isn't impressed by feelings alone or swayed by emotional intensity. It looks for fruit, evidence of growth, and godly direction that can be verified over time. Attraction declares, "I feel good when I'm with her." It focuses attention on how she makes you feel, how the connection eases the ache of loneliness, how it soothes desire or affirms your identity in ways that feel validating. Those feelings are genuinely real, but they don't constitute final authority for life decisions. Assignment asks different questions entirely. Is God glorified through this connection? Does this relationship strengthen my prayer life? Does it sharpen my obedience? Does it support my destiny? Assignment measures impact rather than emotion. It looks beyond the immediate present and into where this particular path ultimately leads. Attraction grows with remarkable speed. It feeds on proximity, conversation, and emotional openness. It accelerates rapidly without requesting permission from wisdom or discernment. That very speed often makes it feel convincing and certain, even when it's neither safe nor sustainable. Assignment grows correctly rather than quickly. It requires time to develop properly. It allows God's space to test motives, reveal character, and establish proper order. Correct growth may feel frustratingly slower, but it produces stability and endurance. What grows correctly possesses lasting power. What grows too quickly often collapses when pressure arrives. Scripture warns us explicitly that not everyone who walks alongside us for a season is meant to walk into our future. Some people receive permission to enter our lives to reveal something important, not to remain forever. Here's the difficult truth you must face with complete honesty. You cannot drag someone into your destiny without causing damage to that destiny in the process. Destiny must be walked into together in agreement, or it fractures under the strain of trying to pull someone who was never assigned to travel there with you. You see only the present moment, but God sees the ultimate outcome. You're responding to what sits directly in front of you right now, how it feels, how it looks, how it brings comfort in this particular moment. God, however, looks down the extended road ahead. He perceives where this path leads, not merely where it starts or how it begins. That fundamental difference in perspective explains why his warnings often generate discomfort or resistance. You see her smile and the way it makes you feel. God sees the exhaustion that waits ahead on this path. What feels light and easy now becomes heavy and burdensome later. What feels effortless now becomes progressively draining over extended time. God isn't denying that good moments and pleasant experiences exist. He's revealing that the ultimate cost of those moments exceeds what you can currently calculate or understand. You see the immediate comfort she provides. God sees the compromise that comfort requires. Comfort possesses a subtle way of lowering boundaries slowly and quietly without triggering alarm systems. God sees how small allowances gradually transform into settled patterns. He watches how settled patterns begin actively shaping your character and determining your future trajectory. You see the potential you believe this relationship holds. God sees the actual cost that potential will demand. Potential always attracts us because it promises something better arriving later. But God weighs potential against its price tag. He knows precisely what this connection will require from you spiritually, emotionally, and relationally. He understands what it will take away long before it ever gives anything back of lasting value. Scripture demonstrates repeatedly that God intervenes before destruction materializes, not after damage is done. He steps into situations while choices can still be changed and redirected. He warns while exits remain open and accessible. He speaks while obedience can still preserve destiny intact. When God warned Lot to leave Sodom immediately, it wasn't because Lot was weak or incapable. It was because judgment was coming and mercy created a viable way of escape. Lot hadn't seen the fire yet with his natural eyes, but God saw it clearly. That warning saved his life and the lives of his family members who chose to listen. Chosen one, this warning functions as your way of escape right now. It isn't rejection of you as a person. It isn't controlling manipulation. It's mercy reaching ahead of disaster to pull you back from a cliff you cannot yet see. God sees what you cannot see, and He speaks now so you don't have to learn this lesson through devastating loss.